east coast of Florida. It's Titusville, Cape Canaveral, somewhere around there, over where my daughter is living for SpaceX at the moment. All right, I want to try something else as well, see if this works. Tell me if you hear this. You hear that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fade it down. All right. So, like, officially episode 3 of Shiftless, but I think we're still trying to figure out what we're doing here.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay. I was hoping to have a guest this week. Hadn't happened yet. So we'll see. We'll see. I know the person I requested join us is probably interested according to their staff, but we'll find out for sure on a later episode. So hey, we're just gonna freewheel it today. So
I think we do some of our best work when we do that.
Probably best. It's probably best that we do it in the morning at coffee time instead of the afternoon or evening, when other things might work into the mix. Anything exciting happened to you since we chatted last, Bradley?
Man, I really need to come into this thing with notes because there's always crazy stuff going on. That's one thing I was going to talk to you about, though. I'm actually flying out to California on Monday to get my oldest and drive back cross country with him. So I'm probably, unless I bring my laptop and microphone and attempt to do this next Wednesday, I'll be driving. So probably won't be able to participate in said podcast next Wednesday. But I can probably do it on Thursday.
Okay. Thursday may be a possibility.
Yeah.
I should be pretty flexible next week, so let's tentatively say Thursday. We definitely don't want you having to worry about things on your end and making things square peg, round hole, or whatever else. My guess is the trip itself will probably make for some decent content somewhere in the mix as well.
We're doing a speed run pretty much. We're planning on leaving Corona at 7 a.m. on Tuesday and making it to Britt's place in Santa Fe that evening, and then getting up and making the rest of the push the next day.
What's the supposed end-to-end drive time when you look at it from Google Directions, not with the brakes? How many hours does it say that it is?
I can't remember now. No, that's what I thought. 20 hours.
Okay.
It's not too bad. We'll end up knocking, it's 12 hours from Corona to Santa Fe. So, and you've got, the problem is, since you're traveling west to east, you're actually losing time.
Kind of, sort of, but you gain time on the way out. Oh, you're flying out though, so that doesn't matter. Yeah, I just did a 15 hours one-way trip, and man, that took, I'm just now recovering from that, and that was 2 weekends ago. I did that. When I was doing it, it wasn't bad, but yeah, the time zone shift in the middle of it, and we had the daylight savings time shift in the middle of it, and I was all out of whack last week.
Yeah.
My body didn't know when it was supposed to sleep, when we were supposed to eat, when we were supposed to be where. It was.
I've been less affected by this, the time change, this one, than I ever have, I believe, though. But I could see where all that would compile to mess you up.
Yeah, and it's one of those, at the time, that weekend it all seemed to kind of work pretty well. It was the following week where everything was out of sync. But I think I'm finally starting to get back on track. I think one more nap this afternoon is my plan. And I'm
a sucker for a nap.
I am a fan of nap, but I've also gotten pretty good at power napping, where 20, 30 minutes of really heavy mid-afternoon, and then it's like, boom, I'm recharged. Where it used to be, and I think there was a lot of hangovers involved and stuff like that. It used to be my morning my late morning, early afternoon nap might be 2, 3, or even 4 hours every once in a while to get recharged.
I rarely take a nap. I haven't had a nap in forever. Now, that being said, I rode hard on Sunday, and we got done, I don't know, and I sat outside because the weather was beautiful on Sunday afternoon. And I sat outside and had maybe a couple of beers, and I was probably asleep at like 6 o'clock, just out cold, and woke up at like 10:30. And then my whole sleep schedule was messed up. So,
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm a little screwy right now. Just the way things work in our household anymore. It's I mean, pretty much everyone's up well before dawn for various reasons. Basically, once the dogs start moving around, there's it's like, okay, it's 5, I'm up, let's do it, and it's kind of throwing off some other stuff, but we're getting there, and it's probably better for me to be a 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. type guy than a 9 to 10 a.m. type guy like I was in my wilder youth, so to speak.
I must still be in my wilder youth because I'm a 9 to 10 a.m. guy. I keep a night schedule. Like, I don't know. I'm just a later guy.
Oh, I mean, I used to be a big-time night owl, and I guess in some ways I still am. But I mean, I used to be one of those. I was up till 1:30, 2, 3 almost every night, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd stay on schedule and do 3 or 4 hours of sleep here, maybe 4 or 5 on a big night, and then every once in a while, I'd catch up and get 10 to 12 hours in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But no, that doesn't work anymore. I'm still usually up after 10, but usually by 11 I'm pretty much lights out, and if I've had a tough day, I can fall asleep between 8 and 9 p.m. And I like that. It's just still not natural for me. My body still doesn't. My body wants to stay a night owl.
Yeah.
But my life works so much better when I go to bed early and wake up early. One of these days I'll become a responsible adult, but I'm not pushing it.
Speaking of responsible adults, I see a gravel bike in the background with aero bars on it.
Yes, sir. That's my that's my Warbird. Those are actually quick release bars that I can move from one bike to the next. It's a pretty cool setup from Redshift. I like them.
I was going to say Redshift, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat setup. Those bars are actually typically on my my Stella, is what they usually are. But when I'm mountain biking, I prefer to not have the comfort bars, the gravel bars on the Stella. The one thing that those bars really help, at least from my perspective, for bike packing setups, just to have other places to, strap things or wrap straps around or hang stuff off of, or, we'll put the light on this and don't have to worry about taking up bar space or whatever. It's just, that's one of the benefits. I'm a fan of the gravel bars, the aero bars, the comfort bars, whatever you want to call them, for definitely the non-competitive side of things. Anybody that gets butt hurt over it is, I think, looking at things from a very limited perspective.
Did you happen to catch up with, or even was it even on your radar what McAfee and Donahue just went and did this past weekend?
I saw afterwards, and I saw that Sean was heading that way. I wasn't up to speed on the details of this year's what's it, Wood Ape Ramble? Is that what they call it? Or,
yeah.
So I wasn't up to speed on what the details were, and it looks like they had quite the adventure, though.
Yeah, they were trying to do a speed run. They were trying to set a FKT on that course, which kind of got tossed in the very beginning because they had to do a high water reroute and add an additional 15 miles. But they were planning on doing it in 24 hours, which is, on paper, it seems not that bad because it's only 120 miles or something. but it's not even the miles or the elevation. It's just all of the unknowns and the creek crossings, everything. You're not just riding. There's hike-a-bike sections. There's one section that's on a high line where you just follow the high line over 3 rises, and there's not even a trail. Basically, it's a hike-a-bike just through section. So that's a big time suck. It's just the mileage and elevation are highly misleading. How about that?
Yeah. That's kind of true of most everything. That's been my experience laying out. The reality of it is anything you map, those numbers really don't mean anything, because it's working with the survey data underneath it, which might be 10-foot spreads, it may be 15-foot spreads, it may be 20-foot spreads, and
Right.
you don't know how much rise and fall there is actually between those different elevation levels. So once you start getting into some backcountry, backwoods stuff, where maybe some of that's never been properly surveyed, those numbers are completely misleading, is the best way to put it. And it's always going to be conservative, because they can factor in total rise.
Yeah.
They can never factor in what the variance is in between. So whenever people just look at numbers on a sheet, on a chart, and that's a piece of cake, it's like, man, you don't know what you're dealing with for sure. How much of that route that you're familiar with is bushwhacking, or is it all cleared trail, road of some sort, or is there a bunch of bushwhacking involved?
It's probably 95-ish%, gravel, and there's a couple of roads that are. So granted, the evolution of this whole thing was it was all scouted. The route was established just via satellite images and stuff. And then we went up there and did a scout run on it. But some of the stuff, the connectors didn't work the way we wanted it to. It's all old logging roads, and some of those logging roads are just washed out. Some of them are old Forest Service roads that were completely abandoned. And it's such I know you've seen something like this, but it's, for people that haven't seen it before, it's really cool when you get on a road that hasn't been touched in 50 years, and there's saplings and trees in the middle of the road, and you can see that it's a road, but like I said, it hasn't been touched in 30, 40, 50 years, but that's your path. So it's not a quick path, but at least you're not having to chop through stuff. There's trees down and you have to step over them and stuff like that, but it's pretty interesting to see this road that's just been written off. So there's a lot of stuff like that, and a lot of creek crossings, and like I said, that high line tower climb that's just brutal.
It's all national forest, right? Or is some of it state forest or wildlife management or anything like that, or not sure?
So the entire east side of Broken Bow, for the most part, Broken Bow Lake, the whole east side for the most part is Ouachita National Forest, and it's leased by Weyerhaeuser, however you say that, the name of that company. And then when you top out and you kind of get on the east side of the lake, it's that I don't know what that is. I think there's some park in there somewhere, but for the most part it's like residential and just backcountry. But it's so pretty. I think in that 120 miles there's like 9,000, 10,000 feet of climbing.
That residential area, are those county roads, or is it some of it private roads, or not sure?
No, none of it's private road. For the most part it's gravel. In fact, I think the only paving we hit is low water crossings and stuff. But it's the majority of the residential stuff you go through is right outside of Ho Chi Town. to the west and north of Hochatown, and it goes up through Bethel and I'm trying to remember where else. But I mean, that's the other thing, is there's not any resupply on there. And that little store in Bethel, I don't know, they close at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, so, but there's plenty of creek crossings to filter from.
Do you consider Oklahoma water okay to filter, or you just okay? Because
as long as it's moving. We did have an episode with the last Wood Ape Ramble we did. Have I told you this story? I don't know if you know this. They went up to scout the route a week ahead of time and thought it to be a very smart idea to stash a 30-pack of Coors Original in our second day camp spot, I believe. And so when we got there, somebody created a little blockade in the river or creek and put all our beers in there to cool them. And nobody thought anything of it. And we all drank the beer from the creek. Yeah. Learn from me. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Everybody, so that was the second night. So the next day is when we finished up. And for the most part, everybody finished before all the effects hit. But Caleb was patient zero, and we were on a climb, and he just couldn't hold it together, and we had to end up getting him out of there. And then everybody had varying symptoms on different timelines. Mine didn't start till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning after I got home. So, and Adam was throwing up on the way home, on the drive home. So there was a big variance in how quickly it hit everybody. But that's the only thing we can figure out what it was, because everybody didn't eat at the same place after the ride was over, and we didn't, all the crossovers between who ate what, who shared what food, and blah blah blah. None of it mattered. It all came down to who drank the beer, and it was just the fact of blowing off the top of the beer wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But nobody even thought about it in the time. We were dog-ass tired, and the beer sounded amazing, and nobody ever thought about it. So,
yeah, and that's that's a really good indirect tip for anyone that might actually be listening to this and have no idea what we're even talking about here. If you don't do backcountry stuff, and it's why I was kind of touching on so you're okay drinking Oklahoma water. I'll go more into that in a little bit. But the nuts and the bolts of it are, we're all used to drinking chlorinated, filtered city water, even if we don't live in the city, even if we're on a well. We've got very highly processed water, and our systems cannot take any bugs that are almost always present in any natural water setting. And that's just like you said, what you don't even think about is what gets. You don't have to drink gallons of, lack of a better term, free range stream water. It just takes a drop or two. There's so many organisms in every drop of wild water, and along those lines, I mean, even if you jump in a creek to go swimming, you definitely don't want to drink the water. But even it just getting in your mouth, you can get sick from that. And people don't think about those things. Like, I can't think of anywhere in Texas, for example, where I would be comfortable filtering water, even in running water situations, because everything in Texas, even if it has running water, there's so much runoff from cow pastures and agriculture, and just between the manure from animals and the chemicals involved in the agricultural production, there's nowhere in Texas that I would be comfortable filtering water. And there's very little running water in Texas to begin with. I can see where Oklahoma would could definitely have a higher possibility along those lines, particularly in areas where there's not a lot of ranching or agricultural production or anything like that. Forested areas, hilly areas, things like that. And I mean, obviously, if you're out of water and you got to do something, filter it, do something. Filter it, boil it, do whatever you can. But yeah, just unfortunately throwing cans in the stream.
Yeah.
Man, yeah.
Well, and maybe I have a little bit too much false confidence in my filter, but a couple of years back, I made a shift in how I was handling filtering, or basically changed up my pack, because I was carrying an AeroPress because I love coffee in the morning when I'm bike packing, and I was carrying my full cook setup, and I was carrying like a hand pump, like a squeeze style pump from MSR. And so my pump was so slow, and it was arduous every time I wanted to filter water. And I didn't really trust it that much because it's literally just going through this tiny little filter. So I switched it up and I ditched my AeroPress and I went to Cowboy Coffee because I already have a cup. So I'm just carrying grounds so I can get rid of the AeroPress. I got rid of that MSR filter, and now I'm running a big boy MSR Guardian filter, which kind of pack-wise is same. I didn't lose any volume in my pack, but now when I filter, it's crazy fast, and that thing is supposed to be, I mean, I don't know what the level of filtration it is, but it's supposed to be like one of the best things you can do. But not only that, it screws onto the top of your bottle, so you don't have to worry about knocking your bottle over right after you get done filtering or something like that. And it's a steady stream, and it's just a hand crank, like a hand pump kind of deal. And that thing is a beast. So I haven't had any issues, but I see what you're saying. In Texas, unless you're in down in hill country with all the spring fed stuff, it's not like we have snow melt here in Texas, So.
And that's the nuts. None of the filtering systems are going to do anything for chemicals, basically speaking, or you can't count on them doing anything for chemicals. And most of them are supposedly 99% plus effective for organisms and viruses, and there's different levels of that as well. But from the microorganism side of things, filtration works. Generally speaking, it's a pretty safe bet as long as you're doing it properly. But even touching on something you kind of mentioned there, like when you have to be super cognizant, like when you're using like a screw on top for the filter, you have to make sure that none of the wild water is in the threads that you turn on there, because all it takes is one drop. So,
But, working in the food service industry for so long, I think my gut flora and fauna is a little bit different than most people's too, because I've eaten so much crazy, random, old food and nonsense. But, I mean, like in Arkansas, I've literally just dipped my bottle in the water, which is a foolish thing to do in retrospect, but I've never had any issues either. Good, clean, clear, moving water on the Womble, and out of water on the way back from the lake, and I reached down and just filled up a water bottle, and it was delicious, and B, I had zero repercussions. But that being said, I don't know that I would do it again. I didn't think anything of it at the time, and then later I was like, I probably dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, you definitely did. I mean, I don't think things like that are ever
wise.
Well, no. Well, I guess it's not like if you do that, you're guaranteed to get sick. I don't want to imply it that way.
Right.
But what is the penalty for failure, sort of thing, and that's one of those. If you do get sick, it can, and I've known people that this has happened to. Yes, nobody wants to have gut distress for a day or two, no matter how, nobody wants to deal with that. But if that's the price you pay and 2 days later you're back to normal, okay, that was the trip tax.
Right.
There's people that have those situations and they're down and out for weeks or months afterwards. Yeah. And that's the type of stuff I'm paranoid about myself.
Yeah.
A couple days, hey, all right. I've done stupid stuff that's cost me a couple days in my life. I'm willing to pay.
We've all been to Mexico.
Well, officially I have not, but I have been now that I think about it. But
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good stuff. So and I'm not familiar with the MSR setup that you're talking about. When you say it's a crank, is it like a plunger or it's a turn crank, or how does that one work?
So it's got a. So the other thing is this thing backwashes as it filters, so you don't ever have to backwash it.
Okay.
So it's got. It looks. It's smaller than a Nalgene, but it's got a chamber on it. And then it's got two hoses that come off the bottom, and it's got a float on it with a little flat filter screen. And it's a hand crank like this, like imagine a cylinder, and then you crank it like this. It's like a side pump, No, it's not top action, it's side action.
Not that?
No.
Okay.
No. I do admire your dice rolling game. It looks pretty legit. No, it's a. I guess you'd call that a pump. I don't know, but it's super fast. I'll have to show it to you when we get together next time and now, granted, it's not a cheap piece of kit, but I was fortunate enough to get it as a gift from my dear mother. About 5 or 6 years ago, and it actually sat idle for years because I was just keeping it as like a, car camping option because it seemed too bulky at the time, or, God forbid I actually needed it at the house, for whatever. And then I started reevaluating my kit because I was always the last person to leave the water crossings when we were filtering. And I was like, man, I've got to do something better. And then I'm like, well, I've got this filter at the house. So that's when I changed up my coffee game too, because the AeroPress is not the fastest thing in the morning when you're making coffee either. Cowboy coffee's super quick,
Sure.
And I like it better, honestly, because I like the dregs in my coffee. I'm a nasty boy like that.
Confident in my water supply is probably my biggest weak factor for my backcountry stuff. I just there's other pieces to it as well. I'm one of those. I've kind of over the years, for something special, I'll definitely do a point to point and break camp every day and set up camp that night, sort of thing. I'm okay with that. But the reality is, unless it's something super special, I'm going to be one of those that I would rather do a base camp type setup, where set up camp, go explore, come back to the same spot the next day, go out the next day, explore something else, come back to the same spot. It's just for me that's generally just that additional time and lesser stress of. I'll be honest with you, I hate breaking down camp. Setting up's not a problem. Breaking down camp drives me absolutely batty.
Especially when there's four or five guys and they're all breaking down and it seems like the race has already started. But I'm the exact opposite on that, because I want to see different stuff every day, and I want to set up. Part of my enjoyment is setting up camping different places every night. I like that. But I'm not racing anything. Right. I'm just out exploring, so I'm not running a super light kit, or anything like that. So
and that's the beauty of this type of pastime. There's different strokes for different folks. Everybody can do it different. I'd rather have an hour extra of ride time, is the way I look at it. Simplistically, like I said, something special. It's worth the investment to break camp and set up every day. But generally speaking, if I'm doing a semi-casual, hey, we've got 3 days to do something, I'm probably going to err to the side of, well, I always come back and my tent's already set up and the truck's got it's got a bunch of water in it, sort of thing, or whatever else.
Yeah.
And it also gives me the flexibility to bring my Xped Mega Mat to sleep on, which that's a game changer for me.
See, I've been a hammock camper. I'm a hammock guy, you know.
Those don't work for me. I can't do hammocks. They drive me batty.
Have you laid in a real hammock though? Honestly, like not an Eno. You know, everybody thinks that Enos are like the bike packing hammock, but it's a very short format. Enos are only 9 feet, so you end up with this, you know, you're cupped almost. Like my hammock that I have is actually lighter than an Eno. I forgot what they call theirs, a nest, eagle's nest or something like that. But anyways, it's 11 feet long, and the material actually has a little bit of, I want to say stretch, but it's not stretch. It just has some flexibility to it. So the material itself has like a little bit of suspension in it. But the fact that it's 11 feet long and the way the fabric is, it's only taut on the ends. The sides are not taut. And so you can lay diagonally in it and end up laying dead flat. You're not like, you know, feet up by your head and your butt down by the ground. It's a different animal. And I just like them because they're so modular. You know, you can roll just a tent, just a hammock, your suspension, and a sleeping bag liner if you want. Or you can go under quilt, over quilt, liner, rain fly, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I've slept down to 12 degrees on that thing, you know, and then I've slept in 85, 90 degrees at night, you know. So that's the other thing about the hammock. The benefit and the drawback is because you're up off the ground, even when it's 70 degrees at night, it gets chilly because you have air flowing top and bottom. So you have to protect against that stuff. Like when you're sleeping and it's 30 degrees, it is really cold. Not like 30 degrees in a tent. So that is the bigger drawback of it. And you have to have 2 trees in order to make it work.
There is that. My fundamental issue with hammocks are I'm basically claustrophobic. So if I get like a hammock, you're there. There's no, and when I say I'm claustrophobic, it's you know the definitely the tight spaces aspect of it comes into play, but it's just the lack of freedom that starts getting in my head, sort of thing. And
so, are you a tosser turner sleeper?
Yes, I am. Very much so.
That's
very much.
That seems to be the common denominator between people that don't get along with hammocks is they toss and turn a lot or stomach sleepers. So, but to me, I don't crawl in the hammock unless I'm tired. And when I get in there, it's almost like a baby being swaddled. I'm out, you know. So it's a different game.
I definitely get that as well. Like, for example, you know, one of my 20 to 30 minute power naps, I could probably do that in a hammock, sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, I'm tired. I'm going to lay down, close my eyes, and I'm out in 35 seconds, sort of thing. That I could probably get away with a hammock, but Most of the time at camp, again, my night owl stuff tending to kick in. I kind of crawl in the tent, and I have to decompress for a while, listening to an audiobook or whatever else before I get to sleep. And a hammock situation like that would kind of drive me batty. But that, to each their own. I mean, even from the claustrophobic perspective, I can sleep in a one-man tent, but whenever I have the opportunity, I'm going to do a 2 or 3 person tent just to have a little bit of extra spread out room myself, even in a tent, sort of thing.
More room for activities.
Well, sometimes it takes both hands. You just never know. You just never know.
Hey, circle back to what you were talking about with water. You said clean water is always a phobia of yours, and to me, that something kind of resonated with me on that, because water's like my safety blanket. Like, I could run out of food, for 50 miles and not really panic. Sure. I can just slow down and relax. Sure. But when I get to like my last water bottle, I'm always thinking, I gotta have more water. Gotta have more water. Like, I've ran out of water a couple of times, and it never goes well. And so that's always like a fear of mine. And having water is always, like I said, like a safety blanket almost. Because I always think, well, if I break down, or something, I get stuck, I've got to have water, especially after whatever I've already been through and everything else. So I felt what you were saying there.
Yeah, along those lines, I kind of have a thing that I do. I know this is going to drive some people nuts. The weight weenies particularly. Whenever I'm doing backcountry type stuff or not sure of the water supply type stuff, I've always got just one of those 1 liter screw top bottles of water stowed away somewhere that I don't even factor into my planning for the day. It's it's like the emergency bivvy or whatever. It's just stuck there. It's there. It's the backup. And so when it's like, okay, I've got 3 bottles, or I've got 2 bottles in a bladder, or whatever else. And, I structure my stops or my planned day around those. I don't take into account this last backup bottle of water.
It's your parachute.
Yep, exactly. And I've never had to utilize it, sort of thing. Now, when I say that, I've never had to utilize it because I ran out of water. There's been times we've hey, something came up, who needs a water? I've got an extra one, sort of thing, because we're 5 miles from. I'm not worried about it.
Right. Then you're the hero.
Exactly. And I like being the hero. What can I say? That gives me that next level of peace of mind. Because what I've found on my multi-day stuff is it's the crap that gets in your head when you're 3 hours in and do I have enough water? I don't know. Pedal for another 30 minutes, and it's been just chewing in the back of your head with each pedal stroke and that cadence while some background song's going in your head. But every 3 minutes, do I have enough water? I'm starting to get more thirsty. Any of those I can take out of the equation just makes my ride that much more enjoyable.
It gets crowded in there real quick when you start thinking about all that shit. You're just like, how much further? What am I going to eat tonight? Did I bring my hammock straps? Do I have enough water? All those thoughts. Great to mitigate as many of those as you can.
It's stupid stuff that can get in the way. When I did Dirty Cons in 2011, I can't remember. Was it the first stop? I think there's the first stop, there's the midpoint stop, and then there's a third stop. I think was the way it worked. And I can't remember. There may have been 2 stops, and then the midpoint was the third stop. I can't remember. But it was before the midpoint stop. It was a really crowded store. Still lots of people before me and after me and sort of thing. And
you're talking about the grocery store?
It was. I mean, it was like a convenience store, but
Okay.
you didn't. I mean, it's a different route each year, so I assume the stops are different each year too. But maybe not. I don't know.
But I was there
only-
I was there in 2011.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah, that was the year we got rained on and everything.
That was the stupid hot year. That Koshin, you were talking about getting rained on with Koshin and seeing him drinking a beer or whatever. That was
And Shannon.
2011. 2011 was the year that Koshin fell out before the midway point, and Charity had to go get him.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Oh,
was the
okay.
same year. And then we
Oh,
got
okay.
rained on.
It,
Didn't we
well,
get rained on?
it got
Rain and hail and
after the second half because
Yeah.
that was that year. It was so hot and humid, and
Yeah.
it just went absolutely nuts. But then that big old thunder had popped up, blocked the sun, and cooled things down. So we were talking about the same year there. You'd mentioned drinking a beer with Koshin or whatever, and when I saw him, he was laid out. He wasn't even moving, so I didn't think he would ever
Yeah.
be drinking a beer. But that year when I left the store before it was the one before the midpoint, I got a couple miles down the road, and somehow or another it got in my head that I had lost my phone. Or I thought I'd left it. I got concerned I had left it behind at the store. It was because it was a weird thing. I had like gone in the store and bought a couple of Dr. Peppers, and somebody else that was there said, oh, they wanted a diet one sort of thing. So I just, because there's like 50 people in line at the store, so I took the Dr. Pepper back and stuck it in the refrigerator and just grabbed a diet and went back out to the group I was hanging out with. And then somebody from the store came chasing me down like I had stolen a Dr. Pepper from. It would turn into this fiasco thing. And so that got me all discombobulated there. And then somehow or another, I got down the road a ways, and it's like, where's my phone? I can't find my phone. And it's like, it's in. And I had a Camelback or something that year. And it's like, it's in my Camelback somewhere. Blah blah blah. But kept going down the road, and it's like, it kept eating at me, and it's like, damn it, it's not where it should be. And so I had to turn around and start going back to the store. It's like I must have left it on the picnic table there, and got almost to the store and just stopped, took a deep breath, had to think about it, and I had it clipped to the shoulder strap right here on my Camelback. And I mean, I probably lost an hour there. It's basically what happened. And that, for me, and it's why Koshin was falling out and whoever else was falling out that year, is because in Texas we had actually had a cool year that year. So that going up to Emporia was our first exposure to heat that year. Yeah. And I thought I was pretty trained up for it, but that heat and humidity in Emporia and that extra hour in the heat of the day just absolutely kicked my ass. I pulled the plug at the midpoint there.
And there's no coverage there. There's no shelter. There's not a tree in sight. I sat under a loafing shed just because I was seeing stars. It was so hot.
Yep.
And then I can't remember what mile marker it was, but like somewhere around 120, 115 or something. I had pulled over and sat on the side of the road, and there were actually some trees, and there was a fence running right there. And I was sitting there just dinged out of my head, and I started hearing water, and I was like, I'm hearing stuff. And I thought I was, just dinged out. And I start following it. I was probably, 50 yards, and there's just water pouring out from underneath the road. And I look, and I go, it looks like it's almost coming out of a culvert, but it's only like a 4 or 5 inch pipe. I'm like, what is going on? So I walk to the other side of the road, and there's nothing there. I come back and I start looking at it's just crystal clear water. Here we go again. And I sit there and I go, man, what could this be? You know, I'm trying to puzzle it all out. Like I said, I'm dinged out and burning up and, you know, just been putting in effort. I reach down and touch it and it's ice cold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And then I finally look on the fence and there's like an old Stanley mug looking deal, just with a piece of baling wire holding the handle onto the fence. I'm like, somebody drinks this. And I'm like, I think we're in good hands. So I fill up a water bottle, take just a little sip, and it tastes like just the best filtered water you've ever had. It's a spring. And so I fill up my water bottle and I drink like almost an entire bottle, fill it up again, and I get going. And it was like this perfect little oasis. So next year when I went and did it, I'm riding and all of a sudden I go, I know where I am. And I stopped there again and got water. And it was such a beautiful thing because ice cold water in the middle of the race. So, but I didn't filter that either.
And actually, spring water, you can probably get away with it because, I mean, that's essentially as filtered as you can get is what it boils down to. It's already been filtered through
the aquifer.
Hundreds of feet, if not miles, of limestone to get there, sort of thing. And yeah, that 2011 year, man, I can't remember who. There was somebody else that was part of our regular crew. About the time I saw Koshin, I think I saw Shannon too. Maybe not.
Yeah. Shannon bailed too. They were waiting for me at the 136 when we got off all those C roads when it was just mud on mud on mud. I think I have my years right.
Well, no, Koshin didn't make it to halfway.
Right, I know. He was stopped. He was already in street clothes.
I thought you said Koshin. Oh, okay. I follow what you're saying. I'm sorry. I follow now. There was somebody else, and basically,
Mike Smith.
May have been Smith. It may have been Smith. It was before the halfway point, just in the heat of the day, just as that thunder. I saw that thunderhead starting to pop up, but it hadn't blocked the sun yet. And I'm chugging up the road. I think it was after Charity had come the other way, and she was in a fit about Matt, and I go and I look off to the right, and it's like the only tree for miles. A quarter mile off the road, over a couple of barbed wire fences, and I think it was Smith, just sprawled out underneath it in the one patch of shade that there was to be had. And I looked at that. It's like, I just don't feel like jumping over the damn fence. I'm going to make it to the store at least. Because, well, we had the Ministry trailer dropped at that store that with our resupply and everything like that. And that was that was part of the equation. It's like I knew everything was there. And I think actually Ben Wright's dad was there supporting him, and I think we threw our bikes in the back of the Ministry trailer, and I think Ben Wright's dad took us back to Emporia from that midpoint because he had bailed out there too. But well, you've been with me, man. I can't do the heat. Once I get overheated, I'm done, and that's the Irish in me.
Yeah, I was going to say most redheads are the same way. A lot of redheads, I should say. Shouldn't generalize. Shouldn't stereotype.
All the ones I know are. That doesn't mean they all are.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, I've been with Red before when he's fallen completely apart just due to heat, and that guy pounds water and everything, but man, that guy sweats just thinking about walking to the mailbox. So
we are kindred souls in that regard, but he's 10 times tougher than I ever thought about being. So if he has to, if it knocks him for a loop from time to time, it doesn't make me feel as bad, and that can get really scary really quickly. Unfortunately, we've never had anyone at our events that had any permanent damage, or thankfully no one's ever passed away or anything like that.
Yeah.
But we've had some scary situations at our events that we've had to hit the 911 button for heat issues, and it's just something I just don't play with from that perspective, because it's one of those things that the people that it's affecting, once you get to that point, you don't even realize how bad off you are. So you can't police yourself. You have to have somebody else pull the plug, is what it boils down to.
Another thing, onto like safety and stuff, one of the things that seems so simple that I started doing a couple years ago is having people's contact in my phone. Like, we were doing a ride forever ago. It was on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night when we used to do gravel out of the house. And we got back to the house, everything's cool. And I was cooking something, and the guy, and Paula's in the kitchen, and the guy that was with us on the ride, super strong rider. I mean, like, made me feel like a chump all the time. And we're standing there talking, and he just, eyes roll back in his head, and he passes out in my kitchen. And I panicked, only because I don't know this guy's medical history. I don't have his wife's contact. I don't know, is he allergic to something? Do I need to, is this an EpiPen situation? Does he have a fainting history? I didn't know anything. And in that moment, I felt so helpless, Luckily, he was fine. It was just low blood sugar. He stood up, locked his knees out. It was, a bunch of little ancillary things that added up and contributed. And he's a small guy anyways, and just probably was running on empty. But after that, going forward, I was like, once we got him good and everything, I just started thinking about it. It's like, it's so stupid for me not to have his wife's contact, in case something happens. And because, like I said, I would not have had a clue what to do. Like, do I need to take him to the hospital? What's the issue? But at the same rate, it's a tough call to call somebody's wife and be like, hey, there's a problem with your husband. We were on a ride. So you have to balance that. But at the same time, to me, it's more of peace of mind. Back to the kind of water thing, that is a parachute that you need to have. But also, when you get into a backcountry situation on a multi-day event, you kind of need to know who's next to you. Are they on medication? Do they have any tendencies to panic, to freak out, or whatever? And so you don't get caught off guard. But I like to have contact information. I know that may seem so simple, but it's something that I never thought about until that particular incident.
Kind of along those lines, indirectly, in the backcountry multi-day stuff, I did finally get a little bit of feedback on that Colorado stuff that we talked about in the segments that we talked about a bit last week, and I was tasked with doing a 12-day version and see what that looks like. So
I thought those numbers were going to be a little doom and gloom for some people. Hey, speaking of Colorado, are you able to talk about Over the Top?
Sure.
I've been getting a lot of questions about that, and I'm unfamiliar with what the format is, what the, what it looks like. It's a 2-day event. Is that correct?
Well, so the short answer is it's what you want it to be. We don't have sign up opened up yet. We're taking sign-ups from people that might be interested in it, so they get on the email list. So as the pieces come together, does that mean you're interested?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Definitely let's talk about it, and let me rough out what I'm kind of thinking, and give me your honest feedback or issues you have or different thoughts you may have, and that'll help me put together the different options for people to pursue. The simplistic approach is it's a 100-mile loop from Alma on the north to Weston Pass on the south as our midpoint, and then Leadville about 3/4 of the way around, and then back to Alma. That's a 100-mile loop.
Leadville to Alma is a freaking beating, though.
It is. It is.
Oh my gosh.
Departing from Alma Saturday morning. So there's multiple ways it can be done. We have the Weston Pass Hut, basically the midpoint, reserved for Saturday night. So people that want to do it in 2 days, do it that way. If somebody wants to do it as a through ride and knock it out continuous, well, I can't stop them. It's public roads and public trail and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be supporting that. If somebody goes
Right.
past Weston Hut on Saturday night, they're on their own from there. There's nothing I can do for them at that point.
You said it's 100 miles. What's the elevation? Do you know?
Oh, now you're asking the hard question. And we're back to, is it real elevation?
Hey, we do need to have a conversation about elevation because I've always been confused about this, admittedly.
Okay.
Like when here's my big dumb question, and this is seriously based out of ignorance. When I do a Strava ride, when I look at my Strava post ride and it says, just for example, 20 miles, 1,500 feet of elevation. Is that counting gain and loss and totaling those?
Well, gain, loss, then more gain, so it adds the gains together. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, total gain, total loss, and then the aggregate of those two. Is that how elevation is derived, generally speaking?
Well, I mean, loss isn't factored into it. Anytime you go uphill, it's factored into your elevation gain, but it's not the elevation gain total in a linear, and it's not an altitude gain because we have no altitude here. So how are you going to get 2,000 feet of climbing in North Texas when you're going back and forth between 680 feet and 690 feet all day long?
That's what I'm saying. It's an aggregate of the gain and loss, right?
No, it's just the gains. Losses aren't factored into it as far as calculation because you go from 680 to 685. That's 5 feet, right? Mm-hmm. You go from 685 back down to 680. You don't subtract anything out, so there's no loss equated. But then you go from 680 back up to 685. So that's another 5 feet. So that's 10 feet cumulative. Does that make sense?
Let's not get further because I'm going to get lost on the math. I'm kidding. Jokes. Sorry. No, that does make sense. That makes perfect sense. But it's one of those things I've thought about, talked about a couple of times, but it's never been put to bed in my head, if you will. So that makes total sense. Because otherwise, if you did a loop, you would theoretically have zero gain.
Correct.
Zero elevation.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Sorry. I told you it was purely based out of ignorance.
No, I mean it's a common question. It's a common misconception, and then there's the other factor of it of altitude as well. So, like if you're going straight up a mountain, if you're going from 10,000 to 12,000 feet, well, that's 2,000 feet of altitude gain. And some stuff is calculated that way, depending on how you look at maps or routes or whatever else. But from a bicycle riding perspective, we're talking total elevation gain. So
right.
The total amount of feet you went uphill throughout that ride, whether it'll be loop or point to point, is the way to look at it. Basically, every time the watts in your e-bike help you go up the hill.
It's somewhere around 12.5 or something. I remember it being.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I remember it being around 125 per mile.
But that's again, that's going to be a low estimate. Yeah, I think call it 12.5 to 13,000, and it's probably closer to 15,000 in all actuality.
Yeah,
is the way that typically works along those lines. So going back to where we started, so that's the kind of main version is meant to be a 2-day continuous loop of 100 miles. But that does have that Mosquito Pass Leadville to Alma pitch in it, which is a monster. No ifs, ands, or buts.
It's gnarly. Yeah. Did you drive the Jeep over that, by the way?
I have not yet. Yet. The one time I tried to take the Jeep up from the Leadville side, there was a boulder down in the middle, and I couldn't make the final switch back. I wasn't going to climb up and over the boulder by myself without a spotter, sort of thing. Yeah. And all the other times I tried to go up there from the Alma side, we were going, it was a high snow year, and it hadn't opened yet. I mean, Adam and I tried to take the Jeep through the snow from the Alma side. We made it like 3 inches in, and it's like, all right, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
I took Adam's fat bike from Alma over to Leadville, and I'm in the middle of just trudging up all that, just baby heads and boulders and stuff, and just going, I can't even imagine driving over this. You know, you turn that first corner, you just look, and it's just, and then it just gets all rutted out and everything. I was just wondering, I mean, it's probably almost faster to take a bike over that.
Generally speaking, it's unless you've got a super built rig, you know, with 40-inch plus tires on it and all sorts of suspension travel. Yeah, you can do it on a normal 4-wheel drive vehicle with maybe some oversized tires. But just a regular vehicle, you're probably going to be quicker on a bike than you were in a non maxed out Jeep rig sort of thing. That's the one option for over the top, is the traditional 2-day way that we've done it. And we're going to have limited overnight space in Weston Pass Hut itself, because their guidelines are, I think, 10 people max or something. I can't remember. But anyway, that's the total number of people we can have in the hut. But there's plenty of dispersed camping around there for other people that, you know, don't reserve a spot in the hut. So
I just need 2 trees.
Well,
2 trees.
You're going to have to be down the hill because we're above tree line.
Oh, yeah. Damn it. Yeah, that's not fun.
Well,
but it's on stilts, right?
No.
I thought that house was on stilts for some reason. Does it not have a balcony or a patio that goes out?
We'll talk about that later.
Fair.
That's so. Basically, what I'm getting at is there's going to be limited space in the hut, but there's all sorts of, you know, national forest land all around it. Some a little, 1,000 feet lower in elevation on this side of the pass, some 1,000 feet on the other side of the pass. So there's trees not too far away. So what you could theoretically do, if you were bound and determined to sleep in your hammock, you could come up to Weston Pass Hut, have dinner with us, use the bathroom, go down the hill a little bit and set up your hammock, and get up early the next morning and finish going down the hill, is one way it could be approached, hypothetically. But again, so the midpoint loop is one option. Another option will be people that don't want to do the Mosquito Pass. They can go back on that east side back to Alma on a different route, and they'll still end up with 100 miles total. They just won't have the Mosquito Pass part in it, is the way we're looking at it. So it's still going to be a 2-day ride that way, with the option to stay at the hut, but you don't have to go up and over Mosquito Pass, which I recognize isn't for everyone. So those are, what sorts of questions did you have, or have you heard, or what's confusing about it?
Just the format. Was it going to be an overnighter? Was it supported? What was the length? What was the elevation? What time of the year?
August 26th.
I'm going to put that in my calendar right now, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead. I'm pretty sure it's August, whatever that weekend is anyway. And So the semi. So the way it's going to be is those 10 spots in the hut. That's basically what we're going to offer is semi-supported. I haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do that yet. What's going to, how that qualifies. I have some ideas, but I haven't nailed that down. And since those are the dedicated few spots that, that's all the people that can sleep in the hut, and it's basically all the gear I can carry in the truck is ultimately what it boils down to.
That's true.
If other people want to join us on a self-supported basis, we're going to be able to allow another 45 or 50 people up to. I don't think we'll have that many people that are interested in that, but we can have Club Spinistry members that show up and join us for the ride, and if they want to come by the hut, like I was talking about, hey, maybe we'll have a big potluck dinner or something like that for anybody that joins. We'll have coolers with drinks and that sort of thing, but we can't put 50 people in the hut is what it boils down to.
Yeah. First come, first serve.
Something along those lines, and that's what I need. That's what I need to figure out myself. You know what? I think I'm going to cut us off here for this one. See how the audio came out. I think we're cleaner with all that. I think. Well, I will touch base with you Tuesday. See what your plan is. Good luck with that speed run, and we'll talk again soon, buddy.
All right. Great talking with you, man.
Later.
Later.